Hello, everybody. Loves of my lives. It's me. It's Jeshua. It's so good to be here. So good to see you all again. I wonder whether you have started noticing it. I wonder if you have begun to not only see and experience, but also anticipate the shift that is occurring for all of you. You'll probably notice it in the little things, Weather patterns may shift from one moment to the next and back again, from sunny to cloudy and back again, and then of course you can say, well, yeah, that's the weather. The weather shifts, but I'm talking about something that doesn't fit those typical weather patterns, but instead fits your beingness, the way in which you are expressing yourself, those sorts of things. Or you may have noticed roses in the winter popping up where there really shouldn't be any. Oh, and then you can go, well, climate change. Yes. You change this climate in here, that's what you're changing. So you may notice that. You may notice other things. You may notice shifts where one moment you are doing something and the next moment you literally have no memory of what you've been doing. Yeah, now we can say old age, dementia, it's finally hitting the Imzaia, But no, that's not what's going on, because right after, there it is again, comes right back. And it all has to do with these transitions, with these shifts. You may notice things in reality where one moment the situation in the world is such, and the next moment it is such. You may encounter, first maybe from afar, beings, humans, that don't quite look like they belong here and now. You may begin to see them in the distance, you may begin to see them in passing, that sort of thing. And of course I could fill an entire hour counting all the possible ways in which you are experiencing shifts and changes in your existence. And it's not only the ones outside of you and surrounding you that you may have noticed shifting. Even more likely will be the shifts that you have picked up changing inside of you. You will notice more than ever before in your lifetime when you are being harsh. Ra made me say that. Or when you are being kind. You will notice that more than you did before, and you will notice it more in your thoughts, the discrepancies. You will notice when your body and when your heart and your mind and your soul, when these things are open and radiating and embracing the world, and when it closes down, when it holds itself tight to your chest and it feels like you can't breathe, you can't really think. Those sorts of changes. You may notice the difference sometimes in your body as you observe yourself in the mirror or in actions you're taking, that one moment you feel 20 years younger and then you feel 200 years older and back again. Shifts that make no sense. You're used to having a muscle ache, for instance, and when these things occur, there's a path that gets written to recovery, step by step, and now you are noticing that one moment something is there, and the next moment it isn't, and then maybe the next it is again. All sorts of things like that. Things that don't make sense. You may notice that where you may be missing some teeth, all of a sudden, for a period in the day, they're back again. Or the other way around. You may notice that where you have short hair, all of a sudden you have long hair. All of these things. As I said, I'm not going to keep going for an entire hour trying to list all of them, because that's impossible, mainly because they are happening to you. They are very specific to each and every one of you. Both the things that are happening around you that you see shifting and changing back and forth in the world, and the things within. They're very personal. They're very much you and how you are dealing with walking this pathway that you have now begun walking. I'll speak about one more thing, just to make someone that's watching very happy. You may have noticed the difference sometimes in the sun. You may have noticed that for many years now, a lot of you had been speaking about the harsh, new, whitish type light that the sun had started emitting, and it somehow didn't make sense. And many of you spoke about geoengineering, chemtrails, sorry YouTube, all of these things, let me say, that don't get us banned from the channel. You may have attributed it to those sorts of David Icke-like things, and to some extent you may have been right, but then, all of a sudden, like a few days ago or maybe a week ago, especially around the arrival of Ra, you may have noticed that the golden sun is back. That the golden rays of the sunshine that you remember in your lifetime as a child are back all of a sudden. And again, just like everything else I've said, sometimes it's this way and another moment it can be that way. And it would make sense if these changes were happening according to natural weather patterns, that one day, for instance, it would be thus and another day it would be so. But this is not, again, what is happening. These are small, kinetic, almost schizophrenic shifts between realities that you are detecting. Small, yet significant. Small in such a way that it is hard to explain to another that might be walking through the same scene or the same stage alongside you. And yet you are experiencing this, and another maybe saying, what are you talking about? The sun has always been this or that. Yeah. As I believe Ra has been stating, there are those currently on the path of Sankara that are aware of being on the path, and those that are not. Those that are not are also going through these shifts, but as they do, they have no recollection of the other state, of the state where a minute ago they experienced bad weather and now they're experiencing sunshine. And they will flow and shift through these states as though everything is bloody normal. Always been like this. What are you talking about? You're going to get that a lot in the coming time. What are you talking about? What are you saying? What? Of course it's like this. Of course it's like that. And at some point you'll get, what do you mean war? What are you talking about? Weapons. Here you sit, my brothers and sisters in arms that embrace, arms that hug and arms that love. And one day, coming soon now to an Ekaria near you, you will begin to see those stages come in and out of your existence as well. And this will go as far as one moment you're watching the news, maybe the same news broadcast of half an hour, you'll get the opposite stories flashing back and forth. You've seen enough sci-fi to deal with it. You know what it's like on TV to shift and move through these types of realities, and now you're experiencing it for yourselves. Your imaginations have caught up with you, and here you sit. In the return of the era of the golden sun, where things are once again becoming simple, truthful. Now you may wonder, why is this happening? Of course you understand the information that has been shared with you recently, but when you speak about this Ekaria, this holographic training ground that you are in, that you have chosen to manifest around you, we have often said that it is segmented, if you will, in different levels, and then we used to say different vibrations, different frequencies. And yes, to some extent, those words are real, are true, simply because your science has invented the idea of light being vibrational and having frequency and yada, yada, yada. So we use those words. But what really is going on, of course, is that, as you know now, these different levels of an Ekaria, where things down here are one way and a bit higher up that way and a bit higher up that way, where you experience the more compressed states at the bottom, if you will, and the least compressed states at the exit, at the top. That doesn't really have anything to do with simply vibration, because what would that then be based on? Why? But it has to do with you. It has to do with the balance within you. And that is now what you are, of course, truly rediscovering in practice, not just in theory. In fact, speaking about theory, you could say that as you look back to this work that we have been presenting through this body all these years, that the initial pieces of information, such as the cosmic manifest, as it is then called, culminating in the Mastering the Grand Illusions series, that is the pathway or an attempt to help you describe and understand the pathway of Parana, as you now know it, as it is coming into the system, into the Kakra system, and as it on its way down, if you will. And then came the Divinity Manifest with the return of Solaris all those years ago, where you became aware, really, of what was happening in your belly. It's what she called divinity, hence the name of the manifest and the series. But that was really what that all was describing. And then came the study of the Pa, with the Pa Kuan Yin San, and with that the arrival of that which we are in now, the Creator Manifest. And that is all about the movement of Parana back upward and out of the Kakra system. That is what it's all been about all these years, just describing you and how you tick along, how you work, how you function, how you create reality. And in this creator manifest, we have begun describing this pathway of sankhara, which is where you meet this for the first time. And we have described the flow of parana, and we have begun introducing you, particularly Ra, to the mountainous pathway of Vabhada. And that is where I want to get to, because as I was saying about the levels of the Ekuraya, you can't really describe it in vibration and frequency, but in states of balance. And as I just said, balance between what then? As you now know, having begun exploring the pathway of Sankhara and the pathway of Vabhada, we're talking about the balance, obviously, between Sankhara and Savok. Most simply put, between your head and your heart, or in this case, your heart and your head. Sankhara and Savok. Of course, it's both more than just your heart and your head, but for the sake of simplicity, that's ultimately what it's about. And that's also why these levels of harshness and the subtleties that they come with are now being so made aware to you, because really it is that balance. How much are you allowing yourself to be in the state of Sankhara, and how much are you still wearing the shell and the shield and the harness of Savok? That will determine which level of the Ekuraya, which reality of the Ekuraya you're manifesting yourselves in. And even more so now, as you have begun the climb of the pathway of Vabhada, this has now become the most vital, not only barometer, but tool for you to decide which reality you're going to be in. The choice is, of course, yours. How much do you want to follow the state of mind, and how much do you want to follow the state of heart? And sorry to be repetitive, but then we are dealing with love, joy, freedom, truth, life, gratitude, grace, and well-being. Is that where you want to stay? Great, because then that balance between Sankhara and Savok will be such that you will come to rely less and less on the need for Savok, on the need for mind, and more on the presence of Sankhara as an eternal flow, and therefore Parana, the flow that comes directly from the Creator Self. And you will find yourself being able to access these realities that are now flipping in and out for you, as it were, both on the internal part of emotions and feelings and all of that, but also on the external expression of all of that, the world itself. That will balance out, and those states will not become so kinetically active and schizophrenic, therefore, but they will become more and more permanent, as you will begin to fine-tune, if you will, this new way of expressing and progressing your experience. That is where you are now. And I think that's pretty awesome. It goes without saying that the entire range of the Ekuraya, of the holographic training ground, and all of its alternative realities created in such a way that, depending on your own balance between Sankara and Savok, and when I say balance, I mean how practical is the one versus how theoretical is the other one. How much part of your being and your identification is it still? That, based on that, the entirety of the Ekuraya and all of its separate alternate realities is available to you right now. This is not a leveling up game where you need to collect the right amount of inventory and do all the stuff before you get to the next level and the next level and the next level. It's not that. It's open or shut. It's an open or shut case. You're either stuck, if you will, inside of one of those layers, and that is your entire experience of reality, or you are aware of all of them and have absolute freedom to move between these states. And when I say these states, then I mean the ultimate, if you will, level of the Ekuraya, which is barely distinctive between actual homeworld of Honomea and the entrance into this Ekuraya, is also accessible, all the way down to what you like to describe as the Dante's Inferno, if you will. All of it you then become aware of, and all of it becomes accessible, and all of it, ultimately, you will learn to see has no distinction between itself and each other whatsoever. Because all of it is ultimately love. That is the actual creative engine behind all of this. But there you are, with all of that available to you once again. And I feel that it is important that I mention all of this to you today, because I'm aware that for many of you, everything I have described at the beginning of today's message is already happening. Of course, the things that happen that are true, unexplainable shifts are easy to recognize, but not the ones where all of a sudden you were forgetting this one thing that you were focused on before, and forgetting it to the point that you don't even remember that you have forgotten, versus a shift in the entire sky from one state of weather pattern to the other. These things are hard to accept, but somehow easy to write off, particularly when you are going through the motions of being in a harsher state, a deeper state of Savok, if you will, and less aware of Sankara. Then you somehow just accept these things, and you even use them as fuel. Oh, look, bad weather now. Oh, look this, oh, look that. Oh, we should be afraid of this. Oh, we should be aware of that. And you use that as fuel, to give yourself the solid ground to stand on the foundation of that level of the Ekuraya. And then it flips, and then it flips. But I felt the need to share these things, particularly because of the other stuff I was talking about, the manifestations, the beings, not only in the sky, that are rather unexplainable. I know that most of you are barely talking about it, but I know also that when you look in the skies, you are seeing things that don't quite make sense these days. I also know that for most of you, you have begun seeing, as I said earlier, these beings in the distance, walking. Sometimes they merely look like light. Sometimes they're sort of formed in the distance, and you can't quite make out an actual face. It looks like that is just blank or light. Sometimes you pass someone, and afterwards you think, well, that didn't quite fit, did it? These things are now happening. And I want to relate that to what I said before in my previous conversation here, when I spoke to you about the Essenes and the journey I took there with my mother, stayed there, as I told you, for many years. I can't quite remember how I started sharing it with you, but in case I missed that part last time, when we arrived after leaving the village and walked for quite a long time, when we arrived to this grand community of Essenes, what we found, or at least what I saw, was a cabin with one person that looked disheveled, that looked like they were sick and they didn't have long to live. And I couldn't understand when my mother, she was like, hugging and talking and acting like everything was normal. And I was sitting there like thinking, geez, Mom, is this where you dragged me out to? This filthy, flea-ridden space? But it didn't take long for the same things that you are now experiencing to start happening there to me too, because all of a sudden, sometimes it would be like, who was that? Sometimes I would see somebody pass in the corner of my eye and there was nobody else there when I looked. And more and more, I would not see, physically see, my mother, while I could hear her talking. And sometimes I would hear music, I would hear song, I would smell things. And then here and there would be flashes. Sometimes I would see a few extra cabins, a few extra people. And then one day, it all sort of clicked in. And where there once was this mountainous desert-like area with this one cabin, hundreds, if not thousands, of houses, people became visible to me. People that had always been there. I just couldn't see them. My mother, who of course had been sneaking off and training over those early years of my life and way before my birth, already being aware and having the ability to connect to these higher levels of reality, if you will, knew where we were and what we were heading into. Eventually, like you now, I too discovered this. And for you, as all of these beings that have been here in the last couple of months and so have been telling you that you are entering the era of universal citizenship and that you are opening up to everything else, for you it's going to be the same. You are going to begin, or have already begun, encountering the levels of realities that are slightly above yours and the beings that are existing within that reality. And the same thing can happen the other way around. You're going to stop encountering certain beings. This could be neighbors that are actually living with a limited access only to a certain level due to their own balance of Sankara and Savok, that will not yet be able to fully manifest themselves at these higher levels of the Ekuraya. And this is going to become your world for a while, as this balances out and shifts, and as you get used to holding multiple realities, multiple TV channels, if you will, inside of your head and zapping through them as though you would your television. I actually think it's quite funny that recently, funny in a nice way, that recently somebody wrote in after the last two classes by Ra to say that they felt happy to hear that Ra was and us were going to be assisting people with the next step and steps on the pathway of Abada, because they were worried that when we spoke about creating community and that sort of thing, that they were going to have to start looking for communes again, and they were sort of done with that since the 60s and 70s, if you know what I mean. And yeah, it's more like, as I've explained now, that the commune is gonna, or the community is gonna be appearing around you. Not that you have to go anywhere per se, but you're gonna start connecting to and encountering beings that live in the version of reality that you are allowing yourself now to have access to. So it didn't surprise me when Ra decided, upon opening the lectures and classes of the Way of One, to put so much focus, first of all, of course, on the energy of Parana, which is obviously where it starts, but so much focus on your harshness and on the need to release this and to go into the meeker, loving, truthful parts of the self. Because literally, it is that stands in between you accessing these realities or limiting yourself here or wherever that is at that point of expression then. Now, a little while ago, I said that the pathway of Vabada, the stages of freedom and joy and love on the way out, are mountainous and cannot be walked alone. And the reason for that is that with each of these steps that you can take on the Vabada path, and each step is ultimately a renewal in balancing the states between Sankara and Savok within yourself, that each time you do this, how do I say this? The effect, the impact will be so great and so all-encompassing, changing everything that you are within and everything that you experience on the outside of you with each of these steps that you take, that you will find it harder and harder to put that shell back on, to put that harness back on. And so what is going to start happening, because energy tends to raise itself naturally, so you're going to be moving towards that creator self now, whether you sort of like it or not. But what is going to start happening is that every time you collapse back into the lower states of the Ekaraya, you're going to still be at a level of vulnerability and openness and heart-centeredness than the highest level that you have access to. Many of you may have already noticed, for instance, with the Pakwan Yinsan, how difficult sometimes, if you can use that word, it is. And then everyone is like, oh, this is not harsh, is it? You know, it's like, imagine if you have a migraine, right? And everyone is just sort of sitting in a room thinking, oh, it's nicely and softly lit here. And you're going, ah, so intense, the light. Well, it's pretty much what it's like. Eventually, when that balances out and there is really no savok left, then the parana begins to be experienced as a gentle flow, as part of the beingness. You have then, if you will, accelerated your consciousness to the speed of light, as it has been explained. So you and the flow of parana also are equalized. You're at the same flow, so that intense waterfall of consciousness, of creator self, that otherwise is thundering down on you and affecting you, then that will be gone too. But to take those steps, as Ra also mentioned, on the Vabhada path, it now becomes about the internal things, right? They said so. The grand illusions are back, yay, but not the ones that we have discussed in the study of vibration or in the original Cosmic Manifest and in Mastering the Grand Illusions and that sort of thing, where we were speaking about the world around you mainly and the illusions and how they formed around you. What now becomes of extreme importance is going to be understanding what these grand illusions of form, of time, of space, of exchange, of death, and of separation have done to you on the inside, if you will. And when you then speak, for instance, about form, it's not like you can say, well, it made me believe in age, or it made me believe in physical pain, or in being wounded, and that sort of thing. No, you're going to have to learn to get to the extent of subtlety which comes without the harness and without the shell and without the prison and without the harshness and all of that. You're going to have to learn what form means on the inside of you. And then we're talking about the form of your thoughts, the form of the space within you, and the form of the time within you, and the form of the exchange within you. So you're going to begin seeing that exploring the grand illusions on the inside is exploring the connection between them. Outside, you think of form as one thing. There sits a form, there sits a form, here sits a form, I'm sitting on another form. And then you think of time. Oh yeah, that's that thing that, tells you it's 9 o'clock and now 10, and that makes your hair grow. Then you think of space, and you think, oh yeah, space is the distance between this and that speaker over there, and on and on and on. But you see them sort of as disconnected, maybe with the time-space continuum, because of your science, a little bit more connected than anything else. But you never really think about exchange and then form. Of course you do, and you can say, well, yeah, exchange between two people and that sort of thing, but they still are seen as separate things that are interacting together on the outside of you. Internally, as Ra and others are going to start deeply teaching you in ways that they're better off doing than I am, really, to be honest, you're gonna learn that the connection between them is constant. So inside, you cannot look at form without looking at time and space and exchange and death and separation, and how the form of that impacts your being. You can't look at exchange or death without seeing its connection to form and time and space, but on the inside of you. And so then you're not dealing really with a world, then you're dealing more with a cosmic ocean. I think that Ra tried to explain it as a sandstorm, which you must find a way to make harmonious, to create in a balanced way once again. And you will discover that with the grand illusions within as well. And I'll give you a little tip. Look for the infinity sign. Because just as everything else, those grand illusions are all connected in that flow and in that way. But working on them now, as you will do in the days to come, walking past them and through them in that museum of grand illusions, as Ra has attempted to explain it to you, is going to fundamentally change you. On the way down, as you explore the initial arrival of the flow of Parana, and therefore explore the grand illusions on the outside, it is one thing to become aware of that and to have awareness turn to a practical understanding and to learn more about the theory behind the practical understanding, if you will. But now, there's not going to be any theory to learn. I guess the best way to explain this next step, this awareness of the grand illusions within, is pretty much like dying. It is pretty much like everyone that has died before you ever has said, so there you are without a body, and then you are aware that you sort of still are a body, but everything that you once believed about the distinction between the external world and the inner world no longer stands, no longer holds, because there is no more distinction. So the removal, first the awareness of, and then the eventual removal of the pathway or the museum of grand illusions, which, as the Pakwan Insan has explained a long time ago, really happens in the early stages of the pathway of Vabhada as you move outwards again, because it really happens in the stage between the Va and the Ba. That is where your grand illusions block the flow of Parana and take over. And there's a reason for that they do this between the expression of freedom and the expression of joy, but I'll let Ra get back to that when they continue. But as the Pakwan Insan has explained, that flow, which happens in that space, is the first major step to finally release the experience of Savok as a practical thing. And I really want to emphasize this, because all of you that have been listening to this material and have been discovering these things in your own ways for all of these years, think that maybe you've already experienced anything of this holographic training ground, this holographic Ekaraya. But believe me, if this was an iceberg, then you wouldn't have even seen the tip of the iceberg, or the tip of the tip, or the tip of the tip of the tip, but maybe a tiny piece of just one particle of ice as it sort of drifted in front of your vision as you were standing on this boat thinking, a little bit of snow, and then all of a sudden there's this iceberg rising up. You're in that space before the iceberg rises up, and you think that this one little fleck of snow has been the entire Echuraya already. Yet, you literally have been in the boring parts of it, if I may say so. You have been in the parts of it that are the early training grounds before the real game even starts. Because think about it, with these grand illusions externally expressed and internally expressed within you and experienced, you have never really, up until now, really made contact with anyone. You haven't made contact with yourselves, let alone with another person. You have made contact with versions of yourself, with ideas of yourself, with scripts and fictions of yourself, which you then presented to other people, and other people have been doing exactly the same. So, for all intents and purposes, you have never actually even met another being. You have just met Savok. You have met Savok in yourself. You have met Savok in others. You've just met Savok. You've just been seeing reflections of the mind. You've not seen real beings, real people. You've never seen anyone's real heart, let alone your own. But that's coming now. That's happening now. And that's why it is feeling so up and down and up and down. And that's why it can feel so intense and so open, and then the next moment, there you are again. The grumpy old self, the judgmental old self, and all of those things without even realizing it, really. All of that is now changing. And you are entering the true, interesting areas of these training grounds and these Echurayas. As everyone keeps saying, that area where everything else is. You have been pretty much in the human cocoon, in the human shell, as though you are in some sort of cosmic egg, and the solar system is some sort of cosmic nest, some cosmic bird's nest, and you're about to hatch. The first cracks have already appeared. The shell is opening. Now it's up to you to take the next steps. And how long that takes is also up to you. Could be like this. Snap. I got the power. 90s, everyone. It could be like that. It could also be the 7 stages of the cross. I do not recommend it. Have you seen my TripAdvisor? I do not recommend it. Choose simplicity. Choose Sankara. Choose the easy path. It's the wide path, not the narrow path. Sometimes it's like it's the other way around, isn't it? Feels like sticking to Sankara and not letting that whole personality spiel do its thing feels like the narrow path. Because it can feel like you have to discard all of this and all of that and everything that gave you confidence, everything that made you you, that protected you, that defended you. It feels quite narrow. But once you're on it, that's the path that widens opens up into infinity. And the one that initially seems like the wider one, the one of personality and savok, just gets more and more narrow as it just leads you ultimately into the caves and underground and deeper into compression and pressure until you're some sort of hard rock. And you're stuck, or at least seemingly stuck for a few lifetimes until you get in the hang of things again and begin to swing a little out of it. Those are the fun lifetimes after a few compressed ones. Again, as you go through the Queen's Chamber and those sorts of exercises, you will become aware of all of these steps that you have taken, and that a lot of these things that I'm referring to indeed have to do with you all directly. But that time will come. For now, it's important to try, as I said, to just let it all go and to just focus on the truth. It's important to realize everything that you are not and everything that you are. You will see that it's just this tiny little bit that you are not. This tiny little bit of savok. And everything else is what you are. And you will learn that even that little bit of savok is also you. Because it is just everything else inverted and compressed into this little black hole, deeper and deeper, until it became a reality itself. And that is the early stages of the Ekaria. And believe me, you still are in the early stages. Could it get worse? Sure. But could it get better? Boy, it can. So, this is not a message of technicality, of difficulty. It simply is a pointer to become aware of what is actually already happening to you. As I said, it took me a while in the time with the Essenes to begin opening up and seeing this world of beings that is literally all around you. It took me a while to understand that that is what is meant when everyone says that everything is always here, you don't have to go anywhere, it's all around you. Because it's literally true. It's literally true. And it is your truth. And it is my truth. And it is the whole truth. So, my brothers and sisters, in arms that embrace and that nourish and that heal, I love you so much. And I cannot wait for you to understand that with everything that you are. I cannot wait for you to see me for the first time as you see yourselves for the first time. That time is here now. Better get on with it. I'll be back. Won't be that long. But before that, there's going to be some pretty technical, pretty far-reaching, but not far-fetched tuition. Simpler than you can imagine. And more truthful than the stars in the cosmos themselves. Consider these things, and I will be back soon. I am Jeshua. I always will be, and I will always be here for you, no matter what. And so it is.